Good evening and welcome. This is Steve Fryer, and you're listening to the Expanding Light radio program. And for this edition of the Expanding Light, I'm on location with Dr. Doreen Virtue, who is a fourth-generation metaphysician and clairvoyant, also a spiritual healer who holds a BA, an MA, and a PhD in counseling psychology. Dr. Virtue has over 500,000 books in print worldwide and is the author of the best-selling book, The Yo-Yo Diet Syndrome and Losing Your Pounds of Pain. Her latest two books are dealing with communicating with angels, and this wonderful book I have in my hand, The Lightworker's Way. And for this show, we'll be primarily talking about the Lightworker's Way. Welcome, Dr. Virtue.
I'm so glad to be here with you. As I told you, I had a vision of being on your show.
Really?
I woke up in the morning and I knew I was going to be with you this weekend, and then it just manifested as soon as I got up.
I'm very pleased that you made the call. And I've been talking to my sister, who publishes the Inner Voice magazine, and she had mentioned that you might be a good interview, but I hadn't had time to make the contact, so it was really wonderful.
The angels just arranged it.
Now, a lot of people, when I mentioned that I was going to be interviewing you, thought that, well, that name, Virtue, that's a stage name. That's made up, right?
Surely that can't be her real name, especially when they say Dr. Virtue, they all crack up. And then I always say, but if I was going to make up a name, I wouldn't have made up a name so obvious. And yes, it is my real name.
Well, that's reassuring.
I just think it's divine order, since I work with the angelic realm, and there's a part of the angelic realm called the virtues. It's just everything always works out.
How do you like Chicago so far?
It's beautiful. It's very cold and beautiful.
You're from California,
Yeah,
right?
I'm a California native, so I get cold at 60 degrees.
Well, your blood gets kind of thin out there.
It does. We get real accustomed to the heat.
Well, let's talk about light workers. You consider yourself to be a light worker,
Yes,
right?
I do.
How did you get? First of all, let's get a little bit into your background. How did you get started with this metaphysical business? Now, you've been in this a long time.
Yeah, I was born in it. It's all I've ever known. My mother actually was having a hard time. My mom and dad were having a hard time conceiving a child, so they put in a prayer request at a metaphysical church, and a month later I was conceived. So I was literally conceived into metaphysics, and my mom taught me affirmations, visualization, all the metaphysical tools before I could even talk. I had miracles happen my whole life. But the thing that's different now as an adult is that I'm open about it. As a child, I learned to be ashamed of metaphysics. It was something that I learned very quickly, that if you talk to people about it, they thought you were real weird. And I got rejected many times as a child for we were raised Christian Science.
You call that metaphysics?
Yes. Yeah, well, we never had a family physician. We'd use prayer treatment instead of doctors. And we were not allowed, there was just different lifestyles. Like, we were never allowed to watch medical TV commercials, because the belief was if we incorporated messages about sickness that we'd see on TV into our mind, that we would manifest sickness. And that was way before its time, that type of belief.
Do you still believe that?
Oh, absolutely. If there's a TV commercial that comes on for any so-called illness, I mute it and I say a prayer to cancel out the negative fear message.
So how does that come into play when you're counseling people? You must encounter all kinds of problems.
Oh, when I'm working with people metaphysically, one of the things I do is teach them, and I consider myself to be a teacher as my healing work. And I often find people who are very, very astute metaphysicians violate the number one rule of metaphysics, which is whatever you claim is true is what your reality is. And they'll come to me and they'll say, Dr. Virtue, I've got this problem with my finances, or this problem in my love life, or this problem in my health, and I want to treat it metaphysically. And I'll say, wait, first of all, let's not claim that problem is real or true. Because as soon as we say that it's real and we give it a diagnosis and a name, then you've given it power and size and strength, and it's going to fight you back. What we first have to do is always claim the real truth is that there are no problems. Everything is healed, everything's great, and whatever we focus on is what we experience.
Now, in looking over your book, I just got it yesterday, by the way, so I didn't have a chance to really read it, but it looks very good. I noticed that you get into some of the history of healing and metaphysics, and you discuss Dr. Phineas Quimby, which I know has always been a sore point for Christian scientists, but you seem to handle it very well. Would you tell our listeners who Dr. Phineas Quimby is?
He's really the father of what we call New Thought religion. New Thought's a little different than New Age because it tends to have real strong roots in the New Testament and Jesus' work. And Phineas Quimby was the originator of blending hypnosis with clairvoyance to find the belief system within a patient or a client that caused the seeming illness. And he had so many clients. The story goes that he died of overwork. Actually, he was in Maine, and Mary Baker Eddy was one of his patients.
This is back in the 1850s.
Yeah, the late 1800s. He was so busy he rarely had time to write, except for a few articles. And Mary Baker Eddy, when she was a patient, got a hold of one of his articles, and there was a lawsuit because the belief. Actually, if you compare the manuscript that she wrote, Science and Health, Key to the Scriptures, with Phineas Quimby's original manuscript, it does appear that she, shall we say, plagiarized his work. On the other hand, karmically, the angels tell me that he would have never got that work out there as publicly as she did.
Right.
So
because he was too busy.
He was too busy.
And she was a better promoter.
She was a big promoter. She was a big-time promoter. And she had a student named Emma Curtis Hopkins, who had two students very famous, the Fillmores, husband and wife, who made Unity Church.
Started Unity.
And then Ernest Holmes, who started Science of Mind.
Religious Science.
And Nona Brooks, who started Divine Science.
Right.
So from Phineas Quimby, we have all of this. Napoleon Hill, I think, came out of all that. Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, all of that came from Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, from the roots of this man who was really kind of a self-taught person. Interestingly, he had his roots in mesmerism, which is another word for hypnotherapy. And Mary Baker Eddy later renounced hypnotherapy as being the work of the devil, practically, she called it. Now, I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm on the board of the American Board of Hypnotherapy, so Christian Science would not have me as I am now, even though I
So you're on the outs with Christian Science.
I purposely would not even try and be on the ends, but I advocate so much of their teachings because I've seen it work. I've seen miracle healings happen, starting with my mom, who was a Christian Science practitioner, watching her do things that were just unexplainable by any other means.
Yeah, I've heard of some Christian Science practitioners who have actually had bones mend, broken bones, almost instantly or within a day or so.
Right.
Which is beyond belief of most people.
Well, and I think that the Course in Miracles, which I'm now, all my work is based on the Course in Miracles now, says that all we need is an instant of belief, just a millisecond. We don't need to sit there and change our thoughts for a whole entire day, just that 1 second.
But it may take us a day or two to get to that instant, right?
They just say all we need to do is lose the fear of a sudden healing, that's what keeps it from happening.
Fear of a sudden healing. That's interesting.
Most people would be kind of startled if all of a sudden their broken leg was mended, and it would cause them a lot of fear. And the spirit world doesn't want to scare us, so they kind of back off and stay away until we're ready for a sudden healing.
So could we affirm, I'm ready for an instant healing?
Yes, and we can release the fears of a sudden healing.
So these are some of the early light workers you've been talking about, correct?
Yeah.
Would you say they sort of set the tone for
in this
today?
Incarnation, yes. I've been with light workers in many incarnations, including the Essenes. I had a very prominent incarnation, at the time of Jesus' teachings in Cormoran, the Essenes. So I've been doing light work for as many years as I can look back on.
Who are some of your heroes today in this field?
That are currently working?
Right?
Well, certainly I'm very well connected with those who are championing the light and who are talking about losing the fear of love. Louise Hay being one of them. Wayne Dyer, I think he's doing wonderful work. Marianne Williamson has blazed trails for the rest of us to come out of the spiritual closet. Right. Betty Eady, to me, is probably my personal mentor and hero. If I have to name one hero, she's done more for my work than anyone else.
I see you spend a lot of time in your book discussing things with her.
God bless Betty Eady.
A friend of mine in Portland offered to hook me up with her to do an interview, but I didn't know what I would talk about.
She is an angel on earth. She really has.
Well, now I have an entree. That's great. We're speaking with Dr. Doreen Virtue, author of The Lightworker's Way, Awakening Your Spiritual Power to Know and Heal. And what kind of healings have you had in your life, Doreen?
Well, my personal healings. You're talking about me personally, my own life. I mean, my mom was healing me since I was a little child. As I said, we didn't have a personal physician, and so anytime my brother and I would have cuts or scrapes, or cuts or scrapes with life, it didn't have to be physical, we would use prayer treatment. And my first miracle happening was when I was a little girl and I lost a possession that meant a lot to me. And my mom taught me to claim and affirm that nothing is lost in the mind of God. And I said it over and over and over again until I absolutely knew that that was true. Even though I couldn't see this possession, God knew where it was. And I woke up in the morning and the possession was right by my bed. And
wasn't there before?
It wasn't, no, because I knew where I had lost it, a place far away from my house. And my mom, I accepted that. That seemed very normal. Miracles are natural. I do believe that. Later, as a skeptical adult, I asked Mom, I said, did you get that and put that by my bed? And she said no, she really didn't. And so I've had manifestations happen instantly where I needed something, and I just set my mind that this was coming to me right now, and the object appeared. And I know that all of us can do this. I really believe that was Jesus' message, that everything he could do, we could do and more.
What does it take to achieve this miracle consciousness?
Faith. And faith is an interesting thing, because I find that when I'm working with audiences, I do workshops across the country, that they often say, but I don't have enough faith to do all this, as if that's something you have to spend years accumulating. I found that if you just ask God and the angels to help you to lose the fears that block faith, you can literally lose your fears that block faith overnight. Just before we go to sleep, we can say, I'm willing to release the fears that keep me from having full faith in God and my God self. And you wake up and you just have been reconstructed.
In the book, you mentioned an experience where you live on the beach.
Yes.
And you walked on the beach one day, and you wanted to meditate.
Yes.
And it was a kind of a stormy day. Yeah. And after you had finished your meditation, you looked down and you saw what?
My miracle bouquet. And I had been doing a meditation on chakras, and it was an awesome meditation because I visualized the 7 colors of the rainbow as being very clear and transparent and light-filled, and I got a sense of the oneness that we all are a part of. So I really lost myself in that meditation. And when I came out of it, I turned behind me. Now, I had really taken my time finding a sitting position, so I had looked all around me before I sat down. When I opened my eyes, there was a bouquet with orchids and roses and a pink ribbon tied behind me, right behind me. And it was so bright and vivid, there's no way I could have missed it when I was searching for a place to sit. And there was no people around. My husband was with me, and he was wearing a thin tank top. He couldn't have squirreled it in his shirt. It would have been pressed. And so I picked it up. I said, look at this, Michael. And he's mostly into this, but he still has, some of his skepticism left. So he was kind of thinking, I don't know how to make of this. And I asked my inner guide, what is this all about? And they said to me, happy birthday, Doreen, because it was the day before my birthday. And
nice.
And so I have the dried petals on my altar at home to remind me of the miracles that we can have when we let go and experience the oneness.
The oneness. That's what I want to talk about. This is really unity consciousness, isn't it?
There's only one mind.
How do you define that?
The one mind of God is the one power. Sometimes people come up to me and they say, I want help with my powers. And I gently correct them. There's only one power in the universe, and that's love. It's either love or fear that you're in. And the one mind of love has access to any information that you need. Whatever it is that you want to know, all we have to do is ask. I think that one of my big roles as a light worker is to remind people and teach them that we must ask, that we don't ask enough. The angels love to help us, and they wish that we would ask more.
Why don't we ask more?
I think that we forget. I think that we're afraid to ask them for the, quote, trivial things in life, like the parking spaces.
Well, some people think that's misuse of God's power, that God is so far up there that she doesn't care about the small stuff.
What a lonely feeling.
I've heard that many times
and that's
from very spiritual
ego.
people.
The ego thinks that it's separated from God or doesn't deserve. But to God and the angels, matter is matter. Matter doesn't matter is what they keep telling me. So parking space is the same as $1 million or having someone healed of disease. It's all matter. It doesn't matter to them. It says in Course in Miracles that all appearances can change because they are appearances. And so parking spaces, disease, finances, love, it's all appearances. And we can ask for the appearances to support us in our light work. I know this for sure. God doesn't want us to wake up in the middle of the night worried about where our bills are going to get paid from or how our loved one's health is going to be. God really wants us to focus on our light work.
How would you communicate this concept to a more fundamentalist type person who's in the mainstream religion? I have a friend I'm thinking about who's 63, got hired after a long period of underemployment, and said she was really thrilled with the job, and it's lasted about a month, and then she told me, it's over. They're going to fire me next week. They didn't really give her a good reason, but I have a feeling it's because they found out how old she was. What would you say to someone like that? She's going to get desperate. I can feel this. She's going to get really down on herself and maybe start drinking and really feel like life is over for her.
Well, I know.
How do you deal with people like that?
Well, the New Thought roots are in the New Testament, and I'm not one to quote the Bible because I think that kind of pushes people's buttons. There's so many people I work with who've had abusive, negative experiences with churches that I really watch these words. But Jesus did teach us, whatsoever you ask for, believe and it shall be given. So that in commas is that word believe. Again, it's that word faith. I teach my clients and audiences to focus on what they want, not what they don't want. Too often we put all of our thoughts and our focus on the quote problems, and then we're amazed when they grow. When I was a traditional psychotherapist, going through graduate school and such, we were taught to help our clients by having them focus on their problems. And I was thinking, no, that's not how it's done. When I was trying that, I was trying to play the part of a traditional psychotherapist. A client would come in and say, Dr. Virtue, I'm having problems with my husband. Traditional psychotherapy would have her say, well, what's wrong?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's look at this. Let's not be in denial about these problems. So then she'd come in the next week and she'd say, well, you're right. Now the problems are worse in the marriage. And I would say, great, you're now out of denial. And pretty soon she'd be divorced. That's because of traditional psychotherapy, which I'm not putting down, but it violates the number one rule of metaphysics, which is whatever you think about comes about.
Or expands.
It expands and grows, and you get that power. So your friend, it'd be really important for her to visualize herself as financially secure. You can use visual anchors. You can have pictures that you cut out of magazines that give you that feeling. I've done this many times as a child. My parents, when they wanted a new car, for instance, and they weren't into big fancy cars, but if they needed a new vehicle, they would go buy a Hot Wheels model of whatever car they wanted. They'd put it on the TV, and they'd tell my brother and I, and we'd all sit around the TV, and we would visualize that car being in our driveway. And we'd have a tin cup next to the model car we'd put our spare change in. And very soon we'd always have that exact car in our driveway. So they always taught us to visualize what it is you want, not what you don't want. Too many people I work with who are such astute students of metaphysics visualize problems and they wonder why it is. Because you know what? Most people who've studied metaphysics manifest very quickly, and that includes manifesting problems. So we can't afford the luxury of a negative thought more than most people.
Well, let's go back to our topic, light workers.
Yes.
What are some of the signs of being a light worker?
Yes. Well,
symptoms.
Symptoms is right. We're all light beings. Everyone is a being of light, but there's not everyone's a light worker. A light worker is someone who volunteered to come here, especially during this time of the millennium shift, to usher in light into the world and to teach, heal, to bring love to the world, because the world is right now ascending. It's losing its fear of love, and the world is going into the vibration of love. A symptom, I like your word, of a light worker, is someone who has this gut feeling they're supposed to be doing something important in the world, and sometimes it drives them crazy because they can't figure out what it is they're supposed to do, but they know they're supposed to help. Many people know they're supposed to help on a big grand scale. But then their ego mind, the lower self, says, but how will you pay the bills if you do that?
You're talking to me here, too.
Well, you know, when I go around the country talking to light workers, the key characteristic that comes up for me continuously is that light workers are the only ones who have angels and spirit guides that nudge them and that won't let them goof off. You know, that a person who's not a light worker is allowed, and I put that in quotes, to kind of sit around and, you know, not do much in their life. But light workers contracted with their spirit guides that we won't waste time, especially right now. Since 1997 is when we really saw the alarm clock going off for a lot of light workers. They all kind of said, I know I'm supposed to do something now, and they had this time urgency about them. 1998, it's even stronger. And yet still light workers, because of their money fears and such, that's the ego not wanting us to save the world. You know, the ego has a vested interest in keeping the world in fear.
What is the ego? What's its purpose?
The ego is the illusion that tells us that we are either superior or inferior to others. In metaphysics, we have to watch this because the ego tries to tell us, well, those aren't spiritual people. Any kind of separation thought is the ego, and it always makes us feel afraid and yucky. And
why do we need this ego?
We don't, and it's an illusion. It's not even real.
Why is it even here? Why do we have it?
Well, it's how the world was created. We kind of ran away from home like teenagers wanting to have our own apartment, make a better heaven than the one we had with God. And so the ego is really kind of the basis of the material illusion.
What would you say the ego is? Would you say it's a collective thought form?
Well, we each have an ego, and as a race mind consciousness, there's an ego consciousness. Certainly, some of the new scientific data that's coming out measuring the consciousness of the world is fascinating. Princeton University's Roger Nelson, for instance, he and his colleagues around the globe have these machines called RNGs, which I won't go into that, it's very complicated. Mm-hmm. They're like the Earth's brainwave machine. They've set these machines up during last January 1997. There was Gaia Mind. It was like harmonic conversions for 5 minutes where everyone meditated on peace. Roger Nelson measured that, and around the globe they measured that there was a change in the energy field during that 5 minutes on the globe. They've also used this machine during when the O.J. Simpson verdict was read, during Academy Awards, and during primetime TV. Okay.
When certain shows are on?
When certain shows, and they can monitor the group brainwaves of segments according to when there's a commercial and when there's a primetime TV show on.
What happens when there's a commercial?
The spike goes down, way down. So what I'm here to do as a light worker is say, let's put our minds together during the commercials of primetime. Let's all pray.
Turn off the commercials.
Let's pray.
And pray.
Let's keep the spikes up even higher.
What a great idea.
If the group mind consciousness is measurable during harmonic convergence, during O.J. Simpson's verdict reading, I'm sure during Princess Diana's funeral, we didn't have, I don't have the studies in yet on that, but this is measurable now. Let's put our minds together. The guides that are coming to me, can I share what they're saying?
Sure.
Because in meditation,
we have a couple minutes.
Okay, 2 weeks ago, a guide who's a Cherokee Indian guide came to me and said that it's urgent that all light workers are needed right now to anchor the light into the earth. And what that means basically is visualizing white light seeping into the earth as if it's drinking up rain. He said that in the spirit world they're holding together fissures, is what they used that word, but they meant cracks when they showed it to me. And they said that they can only do so much, they need our help now. So everyone listening, I hope, will right now visualize, if we're all listening to this and we're all doing it together, then we got that group mind effect of seeing white light going into the earth. And we really, really save our earth and ourselves with such group efforts.
This is fascinating. What do you call that machine again that measures the brain waves?
RNG.
The RNG, and that's at Princeton.
Princeton, Roger Nelson. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're speaking with Dr. Doreen Virtue, PhD, author of The Lightworker's Way and about 5 other books. Is that right? And this is a fairly fresh book, and I heard it's already it's being reprinted.
Yes.
And you're listening to the Expanding Light radio program. I'm Steve Fryer, and right after a brief intermission, we'll be back with more. So stay with us. And we're back. This is Steve Fryer, and we're listening to the Expanding Light radio program, coming to you from the O'Hare area. So you can hear planes in the background. It's really wonderful. And I'm with Dr. Doreen Virtue, author of The Lightworker's Way. What's your other current book, Doreen?
Angel Therapy.
Angel Therapy. Mm-hmm. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but it looks like it's also a good read. And,
Thank you.
And will give us good information. And I think right now what I'd like to talk about is how can we discern the difference when you hear an inner voice? How can we learn to discern the difference between, let's say, the ego and our higher self? And I'll give you an example. With me, when I was first getting the idea to do my radio show, I heard a voice that said, "Start a radio show." Well, that's wacky because I don't like being on the radio. I don't like being in front of a microphone or a camera, but I'd like being a producer. But after a while, I relented, I gave in, and it's been going pretty well. But sometimes I hear a voice, well, maybe it's just your ego that wants to have this success, And so I have trouble myself sometimes, and I think it would be good for the listeners to get your point of view.
Yes.
On how can we discern?
Well, let me first make a comment on what you just said, because it's very important. Many light workers are running into that. When they're called to do service, sometimes the ego gets us by saying, you don't deserve that success that comes along with doing the service.
Yeah, you just want to make money and be famous and write a book or whatever.
The ego is cunning. It'll get us at any Achilles heel we have or any attachment. If we have no attachments, the ego cannot get us. But if we reframe our service work and look at it that we're giving, then the deservability issue becomes moot, because it doesn't even involve us, that we're just purely giving for the sake of giving. And through the law of cause and effect, we will be taken care of.
So I should just say to myself, how can I make this radio program the best gift to humanity that I can possibly make it?
Look at it that way, right. That it's all about service.
It's all about service.
It's all about service. Then it doesn't even matter whether you deserve it. That's a crazy question that's irrelevant. The ego, the way that it works is it doesn't want us to do our light work. It doesn't want us to have joy, which is who we really are on the inside, is joy and love.
Ultimately, right.
That's it. So the ego always talks from a base of fear and anger. And so it'll put you down. It'll say, who do you think you are to even have this dream? You'll fail. It's always got real pessimistic tones to it. Where the higher self, or angels, God, Holy Spirit, ascended masters, will always sound like a loving coach saying, you can do it. They want to push us, so they know that we'll go past our comfort zone, but they say, we'll help you, we'll catch you, we'll support you. And if you always look for, is this coming from love or fear, you'll know. But there's another way. If you're clairsentient, that means you have feelings, empathy they call it, or intuition. When the higher self is speaking, you always get this warm bath of love. It's just a warm hug inside. When the ego talks to you, it's a cold, prickly feeling, like it's just icky. It's just an awful feeling.
Fearful.
It's creepy. When I was being warned by an angel that I was going to be in a carjacking, which is a creepy thing to hear.
Right. I read that in the book.
Yes. So it was an angel telling me that, I better watch out.
Be careful.
Right.
Put your top up.
Right, on my convertible car, because it was going to be stolen.
And you ignored it, like we all do sometimes.
But they made a great story afterwards.
I have a lot of stories like that. Finish your story.
Well,
so you got the message to put the car top up,
but it was loving. Even though it was telling me something frightening, I didn't feel afraid. I felt supported, like a warm parent was around me.
And you still ignored it.
And I still
Maybe that was a test on your part.
Well, I think I incarnated as a Taurus to work through my power and control issues with God.
Okay.
And that's one of them, was to learn that when I surrender to control to God, I am in control. That paradox was tough to get through this Taurus brain, that the more I surrender control, the more control I have.
And the more flowing your life becomes.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece of scenery, as opposed to, just this chaotic scene that comes up when we listen to the ego.
So what happened to the car?
I still have it. I keep the top up now.
Did you get carjacked?
Yes, I was accosted by 2 armed carjackers who wanted my purse and my car, and the angel told me, scream with all your might.
At that moment?
At that moment. And that time I listened.
To your throat or whatever, and
they were demanding my car keys and my purse, and I screamed with all my might, which attracted the attention of people who ended up scaring these 2 men away. I found out later, when I talked to the police, that they had been on a crime spree.
So you found out it's never too late to get that guidance.
I found out that I'm going to die if I don't listen to the guidance. But, it continued, though. I started talking to the angels, and I said, okay, how can I heal from this carjacking? Because I was really shook up from it. And they said, well, you must forgive these guys. And it took me a while, but ultimately when I was able to see them through the eyes of love, that they made a mistake. We've all made mistakes. They're my brothers in the God's light. And feel that love for them genuinely, then I was healed. Because otherwise they were going to rob me of my most prized possession, peace of mind.
Which is really, that's the best thing to have.
It's the only thing that matters.
It's the only thing that matters, right?
And I had my car and my purse, but I didn't have my peace of mind until I forgave them.
Why don't we discuss the reason you're here in Chicago?
Yes.
You're here at a conference called
the Depossession Institute National Convention. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it may have something to do with automobiles.
Repossession, yeah. Well, they say that if you don't pay your depossessor, your check bounces, you get repossessed. It's kind of a joke in the industry. We do, commonly is called exorcisms, but it's not like the movie The Exorcist. What we do is we are clairvoyant. We scan our clients looking for darkness or beings who are earthbound, who are with that person and causing them undue pain.
A lot of people don't believe this.
I didn't. I tell you, when I was a practicing normal psychologist, if I'd heard me talking, I would have said she's certifiable.
She's out there. Yeah.
But you learn by doing. And what I found, though, there's other psychologists here. It's not just me. Psychiatrists are into this too. Is that when you've got a client with chronic depression, and nothing works, the Prozac doesn't work, the therapy doesn't work, we look now that there's a depressed spirit with them hanging around. And it's just like if you're with a depressed person with a body that's got a wet blanket effect. It's no different if you've got a remorseful dead relative, is usually who it is, trying to make up for lost time by hanging around you. And we just escort that spirit to the light using Archangel Michael, and it's a very light-filled process. It's very beautiful.
Now, can you do an assessment while you're just sitting there, like right now, or do you have to go into some deep trance?
No, I don't. I do. I'm what they call a medium trance, where I go into a semi-trance and I lose consciousness. When I channeled the book Angel Therapy, I lost all consciousness. I was not aware of what I was writing. But when I'm doing scanning, I look around and I can see with you, you've got this man over your right shoulder, and if you're right-handed, that means he's from your father's side of the family, and he's got a spirit guide's energy, so he's supposed to be with you.
So that wouldn't be a possession?
No. You can feel the difference, or you can see the difference. And you also, if you're with someone, you're healthy. But if you're with someone who's chronically depressed, you will, usually see a depressed person around them who's afraid to go to the light, because usually they've been raised on that hellfire and damnation mentality that says when you go to God, it's scary.
What was it that made you believe in this possession, depossession idea?
When I started to blend metaphysics and my psychic work with my clients' work, I started to become mediumistic, and I was able to do what I call family therapy across the veil, where I would, say my client's dad was there, and dad was trying to talk to his daughter, and I would be the moderator or interpreter. And it's very touching work. And then occasionally I would run across people who were not supposed to be with my client, who were not their spirit guides, whose intentions were what I call dysfunctional. And so I would call in the angels, and we would take that person for their own growth, not punishment, off to the light. There is so many earthbound spirits in the world today. There's so many beings without bodies who shouldn't be here, and they are interfering with the Earth's growth. And
why do they want to be here?
Well, many reasons. They may have died of addictions, drug or alcohol, and they're getting vicarious highs by hanging out in bars. Metaphysical people should really be careful going into bars and parties where alcohol is served. We should put white light around yourself. Or they're real attached to their house because they spent their whole life earning that house, and they're not going to leave it now, darn it. Just when things were going good, they die. Or they don't know they're dead, or they're afraid of Judgment Day if they go to the light.
Now, there's been a lot of discussion about when you do die, when you lose your body, shed your biological spacesuit, so to speak, that some people are saying you shouldn't go to the light, you should go to the dark, that the light is a trick. What's your take on that?
This is a first. I haven't heard this before. The light is love and God. Why wouldn't you want to go there? That's who we are. I mean, we're light. So it's like attracts like. I'd have to ask the angels about what you just asked me.
Well, it's something to ponder, because I've heard this a couple of times recently, and it does another thing to get confused about. There's
many earthbound spirits. One of the reasons that those of us who do this work are against capital punishment is because every time an angry murderer, usually is who's executed, is put to death, there's an angry spirit let loose in the world. And every prisoner who's been executed basically stays earthbound, and other people who are afraid to go see their maker. So the world it's like a traffic congestion out there. The late William James, in the Book of James, channeled by Susie Smith, said the greatest favor that psychic people could do for the world is to help the earthbound spirits to go to the light.
Can you do that
sort of en masse?
Anyone can do it. Everyone listening right now can just put that intention out there, because the reason is that these earthbound spirits don't listen to spirits because they don't think they are one. They only listen to people in bodies because that's who their reference group is. So we have the power to release them where angels and light beings don't.
That can be done through prayer.
Through prayer, through just asking, just put the intention out right now. I ask that all earthbound spirits in my immediate area be reconnected with their loved ones on the other side and escorted to the light for their own progress, growth, and transmutation. This is part of the healing of the world that we're doing here. I'm also here to talk about some of the prophecies that I've been given lately.
Right, I was going to ask you about that next.
Yes. Well,
you read my mind.
The light workers are always asking me, what's my mission? And each of us has a different form for our mission. Yours obviously is in the media, mine's teaching and being on the road and writing. Mm-hmm. And the form of the mission is important in one respect, but even more important is the underlying core that all of us light workers have as a mission, and that is to lose the fear of love, because we're already filled with love. And all we need to do is release just some of the little fears that keep us from knowing love, and all the rest takes care of itself. We will literally glow, and our light will just go where it's supposed to go.
So how do we remove those fears?
Well,
that's a biggie.
We've confused oftentimes love in the earthly sense with divine love. All of us have had relationships that seem to have caused pain, whether they're family relationships or love relationships or friendships. And we can do ourselves a big favor by being willing to forgive ourselves for relationships we regret, forgiving the other people.
Forgiveness, that's a big one.
It's not a moral thing to do. It's just out of peace of mind.
Well, do you have to do this physically? What if you have a relative that you say haven't spoke to for a number of years? And it seems like there's a lot of resistance on the other person's part.
Right.
Maybe you don't have a problem, but
you can call it a miracle.
How do you heal that?
You can call it a miracle. A Course in Miracles, and I've used this with people, is to visualize the white light within that person and have that white light expand like an aura around that person, and step into that aura in your visions so that you're both one big white ball of light. And as you see you and that person diffuse in your body outlines that you're just one light, watch. The phone will ring and they'll call you, or you get a letter. Some miracle will happen and that relationship will be resolved. That's a way to spiritually heal it.
So it's not necessary to do anything physically.
Not on a human level, no.
That might be misconstrued even.
It exacerbates the problem, because in the world of form, if we give power to the world of form, it just makes form problems continue. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a very good suggestion.
Course in Miracles it's like a cookbook of all these things.
Well, it's amazing. You've incorporated. You come from Christian Science, and I know you've looked at a lot of the other metaphysical religions as well. And now the Course in Miracles, and you blend it all together.
Well, I didn't even want to get into Course in Miracles, but this angel screamed at me one day and said, "Quit drinking and get into Course in Miracles." And I said, "What? What's Course in Miracles? Is it a place you go? I thought it was a class you go take somewhere."
I had no idea.
I was drinking wine every night to assuage my unhappiness with being a clinical psychologist, because that was not my purpose.
You're on the wrong path.
I was on the wrong
maybe
path.
That's a sign when you're drinking.
It definitely
You're
is.
on the wrong path.
There's a lot of light workers who are addicted because they're on the wrong path out of their money fears. But, we were talking about the mission of light workers, and it's simply to glow. When we glow through glow,
G-L-O-W.
That's what we're here. We're light bulbs, and that's through losing the fear of love. It's so simple. When we go into the bank or the grocery store or the gas station or the post office and we glow, other people see it and they know it and they're affected by it. And they don't even ever have to have known about spirituality.
You don't have to talk about it.
We don't have to lecture people. It's just we model it. We glow.
It's beyond words.
It's beyond words. And on a deep level, it reminds them of the light within themselves. And it's urgent that we do this right now, because the earth is ascending. And what I've been told in these prophecies is that this lifetime we're in now, and one other very shortly after this one, is the last time that people will be allowed to reincarnate to earth to work out their love issues. Allowed meaning that like attracts like. After 2012, when the earth is fully ascended, those beings who want to reincarnate for their spiritual growth will have to go to another universe, to a very unevolved planet, which is likened to, when I look at it, it looks like the Bronx Zoo to me. It looks really rough.
Like cavemen.
Like it's pretty violent and competitive place. I wouldn't want to go there. And I'm concerned about people who have a chance right now to fully open their heart chakra this lifetime. Then they can get out of the reincarnation cycle and just stay on Earth, because it's going to be a paradise here. It's going to be a really cool place. It's a beautiful place that we're going into. We're going into the new age of peace, where you never see competition, jealousy, skepticism. You don't see any of these ego mind properties in this new age. And the Earth is just like a happy family. But in order to stay here, we've got to have our heart chakras open, because the Earth won't keep our frequencies if we stay in fears.
I see. Have you had any chance to compare any of the prophecies that you're getting with some of those of, say, Nostradamus?
In Casey, yes.
Or Gordon Michael Scallion, or any of those?
Scallion I'm not familiar with, but yes, I look at Nostradamus and Casey, and a friend of mine, Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon.
Cryon, right.
He and I have the same vision, that we've overcome the hurdle that will keep us from the doom and gloom that those early prophets, Casey and Nostradamus were seeing about the tidal waves and earthquakes and everything. I do see, though, unlike Cryon, that there will be some earth shift changes happening. They liken it, when they talk to me, like when you change the sheets on your bed, you flip up the sheet to smooth it out.
Right.
And the earth is going to do that. But that those of us who've got our psychic channels of communication wide open through losing our fears, it happens naturally, will be told if we're supposed to move. You will clearly know. They'll say, move from here and go to there. It won't be a little whisper. You don't have to worry about missing it. But you've got to have your ears open, so your spiritual ears, not your physical ears. And you've got to trust in it when it comes.
So should I fear moving to California right now? I see you're still there.
There's a lot of us light workers there. Lee, Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson. Of course, now she's moving to Detroit. So
I heard about that.
Yeah.
She's going to be minister of the huge Church of Today.
And I'll be speaking at her church April 22nd.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah. So it's like the emergency broadcast system. You know, that horrible spot on TV that says, if this was a true emergency, you'd be told where to go and what to do. And we've got that same kind of emergency broadcast system within us. So none of us need to fear the prophecies of being caught in a disaster unless we ignore the guidance we get, because we have free will, just like I had the free will to walk into a carjacking after I was warned.
But you were warned.
I was warned so loud as you can hear me. 3 times they said it to me.
Hotel noises. I wanted to talk a little bit about doors versus detours. You talk about that in your book.
Yes, Betty Eady wrote up to me, yes, about how we know when it's our path or a detour. What I call a delay tactic. A delay tactic is something that is the equivalent of pushing the snooze button on the alarm that God is ringing for you right now. Saying to God, I'm not ready yet. 5 more minutes, just let me wake up. Tomorrow I'll start my light work. And this is addictions as a delay tactic. I used drinking wine every night as a delay tactic. I'll think about my career tomorrow.
What are some other ones that you've encountered with people?
Oh, the big one that light workers get into is they have 1 or 2 friends, in quotes, who have chronic problems, and they spend all their time on the phone trying to heal or fix that friend.
Gee, I don't know anyone like that.
And they say, I can't save the world because Mary's still sick.
Yeah, I have to save Mary.
Yeah, once Mary's saved, then I can go save the world. And that's a big delay tactic, because Mary is addicted to her problems. And you are using her as much as she's using you to delay.
To delay.
Right. So I tell light workers, watch for this trap, because it's a quick one. The other delay tactics are fears. A big fear that light workers run into, it's one of the final fears, that the ego hangs onto our ankles as we're crossing the Rainbow Bridge. Mm-hmm. And it says, stay here, stay here. The ego says, if you fully opened your psychic channels, you'll go nuts. You'll go crazy, you'll die, you'll ascend. And so the person starts to go, wait a minute, I want to stay here with my family. I don't want to go nuts. I want to be a normal person. And the ego says, gotcha. And we have to watch this fear. It's not true. If you open your psychic channels, you'll be one of the most sane people there are around. You may not be able to relate to your current friends. You may find that your vibrations shift so that you have new friends. But you won't go crazy. You won't die or ascend till you've finished your purpose.
It seems to me a lot of people are getting hit head on with their old stuff. Like a lot that isn't there a phrase that which has been hidden will be revealed,
yes.
and so forth. And I'm referring to Clinton as sort of the the big daddy of all of this,
Yeah.
in a way. He's the model.
Right.
All this stuff that he's been in denial about is just hitting him right in between the eyes.
Right.
And I think it's happening to a lot of people, too.
Yeah, we're supposed to all be clearing right now. I liken this time of peace we have right now is the time to study before the exam. We shouldn't be wasting our time right now by redecorating our houses and such. We should be using this time to clear. And the easiest way to clear is to remember always that everybody in your life, whether it's Clinton, a famous person, or a friend or family member, is a mirror of your stuff. And so whenever we get irritated, we must remember that we're seeing something in that person that we don't want to see in ourselves. The affirmation the angels gave me, which is a one-size-fits-all affirmation to clear, is to say this whenever you get irritated. I am willing to release that part of me that irritates me when I think of you. Let me repeat that. I am willing to release that part of me that irritates me when I think of you. And it's amazing, the stuff that comes out. It's like gobs of darkness just comes out whenever you make that affirmation. And whether you're looking at a movie star on TV that irritates you, or you're thinking about a relative that just, oof.
Yeah, that guy with the tan.
Yeah.
George
Hamilton.
I like him as a person, but he irritates me. He's always got this tan.
So there's something you're seeing in him.
So slick,
Well, because you're supposed to be in California.
You can't have a tan, look good all the time, and have it all, right?
Yeah. There's always something within us that irritates us when we see other people, and it's the quickest way to clear. Louise Hay says that she's happy now when she gets irritated. She says, "Oh, goody, I get to clear something else."
Oh, that's a great way to
Isn't
look at it.
that a neat way to reframe it?
Now, in your book, you also spend a lot of time, I think half of the book, discussing healing techniques.
Yes.
We've got maybe just a couple of minutes,
Uh-huh.
so maybe you could relate your favorite healing technique, or one that you think would be particularly easy and effective to do.
Well, we've talked about forgiveness and the light bubble technique. Here's another one that Course in Miracles talks about. Every so-called problem in your life is a result of errors in your thinking, mistaken thinking. It's not the result of punishment. Failure is not a punishment. Success is not a reward.
Right.
It's cause and effect. If there's something in your life that you want to get rid of, that is not serving you, the quickest way to clear it is to admit that you made a mistake in your thinking and ask that all effects of this mistake be cleared in all directions of time for everyone involved.
I like that.
It's so amazing. It's a miracle treatment, again, from Course in Miracles. And what happens is that it's that old thing of forgive and forget. When someone forgives you, they go, forget about it. It's literally that happens when you ask that all effects of that one mistake you made in thinking back in time. The Course in Miracles calls it collapsing time. All things that branched out from that one original thought are gone because the source is gone. You've released that error in thinking. So therefore, everything attached to it goes like a helium balloon into the sky. So that's my favorite healing technique for some wrong detour that we've taken that we want to, get back on path with real quick.
Well, we have to wrap it up here, but this hour just goes by too fast, too quickly.
This has been wonderful talking with you.
I've really enjoyed myself here, and I wish it could go on for another hour or two. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Yes. The angels tell me to tell you and your listeners that they love you very, very much, that they honor the work you're doing, and they support you fully, Steve. They are also telling this to the listeners. They love you, they love you, they love you. And it's their greatest joy when you have joy. And they say, ask us more often to bring you joy. That gives us a favor, too.
Oh, well, I really feel that. That's a true message. And if you'd like to purchase the book, the author is Dr. Doreen Virtue, Ph.D., The Lightworker's Way. And it's put out by Louise Hay, Hay House.
Uh-huh.
And the other book is?
Angel Therapy, also put out by Hay House.
And there's quite a few other ones if you look in your favorite bookstore on dieting and weight loss. So I want to thank you, Dr. Virtue, for being here with us on The Expanding Light.
Thank you.
I hope we can meet again sometime.